Máme tu videjko, prečo by sme mali byť nahypovaní na Manor Lords, tak poďme na to, priatelia.
You have been chosen to govern a land of great peril and promise.
Titulky mínus.
Manor Lords, the insane medieval city builder and realistic combat simulator being developed by just one man and one of the most
To som napríklad vôbec nevedel, že Manor Lords je tiež vyvíjaný iba jediným človekom, ale čo som počul, tak na tom pracuje roky, ty vole, že vraj to trvá už strašne dlho ten vývoj.
listed games on Steam for many years in a row, is now finally due to release on April 26, 2024 on Steam, and it's also coming to Xbox's PC Game Pass.
To je sila nie, ako to vyzerá to úplne bohovský, však sa na to pozri, ty vole. To je totálny masaker, jak to vyzerá to fakt skvelo.
That means that in exactly 1 month from now, we'll be able to sink our teeth into one of the best games to land on PC in easily the last decade, at least based on some of the playtests that I tried sometime back in 2022.
Ja si myslím, že táto hra poškrabe úplne všetky moje potreby, ktoré momentálne mám. Chcelo by to nejaký city builder? Áno, je to city builder. Chcelo by to niečo stredoveké? Áno, je to stredoveké. A predpokladám, že keď si to dáš do toho úplne najzoomovanejšieho pohľadu, pretože ty si vieš vybrať postavičku, na ktorú sa budeš dívať, ako ten Manor Lord môžeš behať po tom svojom osídlení, že to budú totálne memečka proste. Takže ja si myslím, že táto hra bude totálny golden treasure.
Sheer amount of love and the overwhelming fidelity and attention to detail makes this game stand out far above the competition. And with exception to the likes of Frostpunk 2,
Týmito zábermi mi to celkom pripomína Farthest Frontier. A mám chuť veľkú zahrať si Farthest Frontier predtým, ako si zahrám Manor Lords a pravdepodobne si aj zahrám Farthest Frontier predtým, ako vyjde Manor Lords. Ale pravdepodobne je toto o toľko vymakanejšie ako Farthest Frontier, že sa nemôžu spomínať ani v jednej vete spolu.
And Bellwright, it's my most anticipated game in a very long time. So I thought it might be cool to take a look at some of the promised features that make this game such an exciting thing to behold, and why it definitely deserves a place at the top of your wishlist as well. And what better place to start than with just how gosh darn sexy this game is to look at.
Je to sexy, no. Vyzerá to fakt neskutočne dobre.
My oh my is this game pretty. With its vibrant depiction of 14th century France, this game is full of gorgeous, meticulously crafted and historically accurate buildings and houses that bring the era to life in ways that we've never really seen before in a game. Set against the backdrop of breathtaking forests and luscious green meadows
ten les vyzerá
nádherne.
A v ktorej inej hre máš proste, že OK, tuto je world mapa a môžeš sa tuto pozrieť na kopce, ktoré sú v okolí zalesnené stromami a vyzerá to takto strašne dobre. Je to samozrejme low res, ten bitrate zožral celú kvalitu, ale vidíš proste, že keby to bolo v lepšej kvalite, tak to vyzerá úplne nádherne a teším sa, jak sa na to pozriem.
In either a classic RTS or all the way down in a spectacular third-person view as you walk around your settlement dressed in glamorous robes and garments, watching your people bring in the harvest and go about their daily business. Everywhere you look, this game is just oozing with finite details that just take your breath away, like watching your people construct a building by meticulously placing each plank where it needs to be one by one, or watching how snow...
Môžeš si proste zobrať svojho Manor Lorda a ísť tam otravovať pezantov pri robote i sa im do toho miešať. Je to tak, no kámo, toto budú najväčšie memečka, keď tam budeš behať medzi pezantmi, to vám hovorím. 26. apríl si poznač do kalendára, čet.
Slowly accumulates on and around buildings as the seasons go from autumn to winter, before slowly melting away again as it goes back towards summer. The actual underlying game mechanics themselves are equally as deep and engaging, which is good because that's actually the most important part of any game that you're hoping to sink hundreds of hours into. Your goal in Manor Lords is to establish a settlement and slowly grow it into a large town or even a small city, providing everything you need for your people along the way to help them not just survive, but thrive, and ensure that they've got everything they need to survive the next winter, or be able to fight on the battlefield should the...
No, to je klasika proste. Musí zabezpečiť základné suroviny proste pre svojich dedinčanov, aby mohli ďalej pokračovať a z extra resursov urobíš progres, aby si mohol postúpiť ďalej na nové technológie a tak ďalej. To je klasická mechanika každej takejto stratégie, by som povedal, city buildingovej.
Situation call for it. But you can't just go around
Tak bude to third person alebo taktická mapa? Bude to obidve kingy. Kto kedy prišiel s takýmto nápadom, že urobíme city builder, v ktorom môžeš pobehovať ešte aj po svojej dedine? Nie je to geniálne?
harvesting everything in sight, there's also environmental factors that you're going to need to take into consideration. For example, in order to construct new buildings, your people need wood, which has to be gathered by nearby forests. But too much deforestation in one area can cause serious problems for the environment, which can, amongst other things, lead to a lack of natural herbs used in medicines.
Jo, čiže keď vyťažíš príliš veľa stromov, tak nebudeš mať bylinky potom, ktoré budeš potrebovať napríklad na prírodzenú medicínu. Ale zaujímalo by ma, že či to bude mať aj také tie ďalšie side efekty, ako napríklad, že ja neviem, môžeš mať zosuv pôdy, keď tam nebudeš mať stromy, kde predtým boli, alebo budeš mať záplavu, alebo niečo podobné. Nebol by som taký prekvapený, keby to bolo premakané až do takejto miery.
Then there's farming. Your people need food after all. You'll need to build farms and hunt wild deer to produce food, but just like in the real world, you need to ensure that you rotate your crops after each and every harvest to keep the soil nutrients balanced.
To je aj vo Farthest Frontier, že keď niečo zasadíš, tak to potrebuješ rotovať každú sezónu a presádzať nové tieto byliny, ktoré máš zasadené, aby proste tá pôda zostala stále plodná.
Lest the fertility of the ground diminishes and your crop yield reduces or completely fails, which would have catastrophic consequences for your people. The same goes for livestock and wild animals as well. As your settlement expands, deer and other wild animals will seek refuge away from the hustle and bustle of your growing town by migrating further away into the forests and the hills, which means your hunters will need to travel further and longer to keep up with the fleeing herds, all of which can quite easily spell doom for your settlers if you fail to manage it properly. So careful expansion will be the key to success.
Na to som majster, na careful expansion, že proste nie, ideme expandovať, serieme na potreby našich dedinčanov.
The other factors also play a role in whether your people make it through the next year or not. To help alleviate some of the food-related concerns, we're going to be able to order our citizens to extend their houses and gardens and start using their small patches of land to grow extra crops and livestock, all of which will contribute to the stockpile of food and the ever-growing needs of the people. Almost every type of resource needs to be refined further before it can be used to produce usable items for your town. Logs need to be turned into planks before they can be used in construction. Grain needs to be milled before it can be used to make proper food. Ore needs to be smelted and refined into alloys, and animal hides need to be turned into leather before being used to make boots. All of this takes time and planning, because if your people are left without tools or weapons, or worse still, food, then they might wither and die, leaving your town gravely underpopulated and unable to fulfill basic obligations, starting a cascading domino effect of suffering and despair.
Toto je to, že tá hra by úplne stačila sama o sebe s tým, že je to vymakaný city builder, v ktorom sa ešte môžeš aj za toho Manor Lorda proste postaviť donútra do tej dediny a pobehať si tam medzi svojimi pezantmi. Ale ono to má ešte aj ten kombatový aspekt a ja nechápem, jak táto hra nebude overkill, ktorý ti totálne roztopí procesor. No. Uvidíme. Ja dúfam, že to bude aj dobre optimalizované. Ako chcel by som veľa a priznám sa, že mám celkom vysoké očakávanie od tohto. Som zvedavý, jak to bude zvládnuté.
That could quite easily eventually lead to the complete collapse of your settlement. But it's not all doom and gloom in the medieval times. Assuming you manage to keep up with your people's basic needs, any excess goods that you make can be sold for gold. Gold that can be used to pay your royalties to the ruler of the land and hire mercenaries to bolster the ranks of your army in times of war. You'll also be able to use it to buy new industries, products and tools in the research tree. In many city builder games, I often feel as though any combat mechanics are just sort of bolted on, with very simplified troop management and battles that take place on a small scale with little to no fanfare. A feature added to the game just so they can write real-time combat in the About section of the game's Steam page. But in case it wasn't already obvious, that's just not how
Kámo, ale toto je total war level stratégie proste v takejto hre, kde by si to vyslovene nečakal. A bojím sa toho, že keď ten ten vývojár, ktorý na tom robil, keď chce proste od svojej hry všetko a má príliš veľké ambície a chce z toho mať Total War, chce z toho mať Farthest Frontier, chce z toho mať Medieval Dynasty, chce z toho mať úplne všetko proste a v každom elemente ideálne ešte prekonať svoju konkurenciu, tak je to príliš veľké sústo, ktoré si mohol odhryznúť a možno to vytvára práve ten efekt, že máš vysoké očakávania a budeš sklamaný práve. Ja dúfam, že to budú dotiahnuté tie mechaniky. Ja by som bol úplne v pohode s tým, že by tam táto combat stránka vôbec nebola, ale vyzerá byť prepracovaná.
Manor Lords likes to do things. The combat in Manor Lords promises to be a deep and meaningful affair that requires planning, cunning and strategy to succeed, equal in detail to the city building side of the game itself, with overlapping features such as weapon production to prepare for war and casualties after the battle takes place that could seriously impact your overall successfulness and force you to consider all outcomes before making any decisions, even in times of peace. You see, the bulk of your army will comprise of your loyal subjects, the very people that till the land and harvest the crops for you, chop up logs to make firewood, and head out into the forest looking for food. They are the ones that will also march out to battle, leaving their wives and children behind to fight in your wars for you, with exception to mercenaries which you hire externally using gold raised from taxes and selling excess goods. Now that is brutal. The prospect of one day seeing old cheerful Charlie chopping logs and playing with his kids at his house on the hillside, to the backdrop of a tranquil valley full of trees and green grass, to then see that very same Charlie, albeit probably slightly less cheerful, standing in the front row of your militia getting hit in the head with arrows, facing the reality of his own mortality. And if that doesn't make you think twice before starting a war that you could otherwise maybe avoid by using a bit more diplomacy, then...
Jo, to bude presne môj prípad. Budem sa snažiť diplomaticky vyhnúť každému konfliktu, aby som svojich pezantov neposielal zbytočne na smrť.
Respectfully, you're just a monster. Still, from a gaming perspective, it's pretty awesome. Let's say old Charlie doesn't make it. Who's going to chop down those trees in his place when the battle's over? Are there any other adults around that are going to be able to take over the important tasks left behind by fallen warriors? Are there enough children of the right age that will be able to replenish your town's dwindling numbers and then prepare to make the next generation after that? Maybe, but then again, maybe not. And these are the kinds of things that you'll be forced to take into account before making any major decisions in Manor Lords. The very life and death of your people is in your hands. Soon, it'll be time to see what kind of lord you really are.
Mega.
Thanks for watching my weird little video on Manor Lords. I might have gotten a little bit carried away, but it was fun to write and I really hope it was fun.
Bola to zábava, dobré videjko, týpek. Dáme lajčíček, jasné. Aby som vám vlastne mohol posnúť to videjko aj do chatu, že jo. Každopádne, priatelia, na toto sa teda rozhodne tešíme. A 26. apríla hopefully už budeme hrať Manor Lords. Takže si to môžete kľudne poznamenať do svojho kalendára, pretože ešte včera som nevedel úplne, že o čom je reč. A dneska už som